Well, welcome everyone to this presentation of the introduction to our update to the Unified Development Ordinance. This is a presentation that we have shared with a series of district meetings. We have had one meeting in each district throughout Newton County. And so we are taking this opportunity to post this video and audio onto the website so that those that weren't able to be at one of the meetings were able to see the introduction presentation. So during the meeting, what we do is we make an introduction of the project, and then we explain who's involved in it in the code update process. And then we'll walk through that, the project schedule and the different steps in the code revision process. And then we have exercises at the end of our meetings where folks provide us with their feedback on a series of issues and topics related to the Unified Development Ordinance. So this project is organized with Newton County at the top, the Board of Commissioners, the Planning Commission, the staff of Newton County are the project managers of this. A group called Kendig Keast Collaborative is the consulting firm that was hired as the lead entity to update this code. I'll talk about them a little bit more in a minute, but they're a well-known national firm that has done ordinance updates throughout the U.S. There are two subcontractors. One is Balch Law Group. They are a lawyer who is very skilled in land use and development law. And then our firm, GMC, Goodwin Mills Kaywood, and we are a planning and development and architecture firm, and we are involved because we were updating last year the comprehensive plan for Newton County. And so one of the recommendations from the comprehensive plan was to update the Unified Development Ordinance. And so we are helping out with that piece and also public engagement and involvement throughout the process. So we said who would be involved. Again, at the top is Newton County. That would be the elected officials, the staff, and most importantly, the residents and the folks who use the code on a daily basis. Shana Applewhite is our project manager with the county. She is the director of planning and development for Newton County. And so with Kendig Keast, the company that is leading this, Brett Keast is the principal in charge. For this project, Brian Mabry is the project manager, and he has made several visits to the county and will continue throughout the process. And he's assisted by Rachel Booth, who is a planner and also with a lot of experience in zoning and code. So that's a little bit about Kendig Keast. Goodwin Mills and Kaywood, I talked about a minute ago. My name is Glenn Coyne. I am the planning leader for Georgia. Our company is in all of the southeastern states, and so I primarily work in the state of Georgia. Kalanis Johnson is a senior planner with our firm and has been active both in the comprehensive plan and in the update to the code. And our third member of our team is Keelan Millies Luck. She is a planner who also has experience with development and zoning and codes. So again, our firm was brought in primarily because of our experience with Newton County and our knowledge from updating the comprehensive plan just last year. I'll talk about that in a minute some more. So again, to repeat, our project team is a very good collaboration between the county staff and Kendig Keast and Goodwin Mills Kaywood. We have regular update meetings, and both by email and in person and over the phone. We've also had a series of focus groups and stakeholder interviews that we've held. Those are groups that are really users of the code. You think about developers, chambers of commerce, other folks who have an interest in how the code is updated. But then, as I said earlier, most importantly is the public. We want to make sure that at the beginning and the middle and at the end of this process, we've invited the public to give their comments. So we held open house meetings, which I talked about a minute ago. We are constantly updating the county website. This particular presentation is being made available. And then we also, at the end of the process, will have a series of public hearings, which are formal requirements when you're updating the code. So we will have advertised public hearings once we have a draft at the end. We also have regular updates to the Planning Commission and to the Board of Commissioners, and those have already happened at the introduction stage, and we will make interim reports to each of those groups as we go along. Again, I mentioned the comprehensive plan. I wanted to back up just a minute. In Georgia, usually you update your comprehensive plan every 5 years. and Newton County is on that schedule. And so the last adopted plan was in June 27th of 2023. That was a 10-month process that we helped the county with, again, in collaboration with the staff. And through that, we again had extensive public involvement. We met in each district. We had an online public survey. We had many opportunities for the public to be involved in that process, and we had very good participation, and we're even getting more through this process of updating the code. Essentially, the county is divided up into a series of character areas. If you want to think about how land uses relate to each other, those are what those character areas are. We did not drill down into a parcel by parcel land use map, but we did establish what future development patterns would look like if Newton County follows their the plan in each of these different districts. And I want to emphasize that this is both a short-term and a long-term plan. There are recommendations and elements that will happen very soon in 2, 3, 4 years, and there's elements that would happen farther out, 10, 12, 15 years. So it has elements of both short-term and long-term that the county has already begun implementation of that comprehensive plan adopted last year. The comprehensive plan will again be updated 5 years from now, so any new changes or developments that need to be incorporated, they'll go through that process again in 5 years. So what is a Unified Development Ordinance and what does it do? Well, a very simple way to explain it that we found very helpful is think about it when you go to a restaurant and you have a menu. A lot of times there'll be a brief description of what you're ordering, maybe a picture of what you're getting, but it really shows kind of the final results. So there's less details or information, but it's got images, it's got a kind of an idea to give you enough of an idea of what you're going to get. On the other hand, back in the kitchen, they have, and that really represents the comprehensive plan, excuse me. The menu that you see at the table is more about the comprehensive plan with the vision, graphics, a summary of what you're going to have. Back in the kitchen, they have the equivalent of a Unified Development Ordinance, which is the recipe. And that really has very detailed instructions about quantities, ingredients, how long it's prepared, very technical. There are also some graphics and some images that help them, but it really gets down to the details of how you begin, what ingredients you use, how they come together to end up with that final picture that we showed in the comprehensive plan. So it's very similar between a menu and a recipe if you want to think about the comprehensive plan and the zoning and Unified Development Ordinances as a way to think about that. So the process that we're going through and that we've begun is, wanted to back up and take a look that Newton County back in 2020, they took a really fantastic action. It's very popular throughout the country to take a whole series of ordinances that relate to each other but aren't in the same place and combine those into something called a Unified Development Ordinance. And that really includes the zoning ordinance, which controls land use and setbacks and lots of other regulations of how land is used. Development regulations, think about subdivision regulations or commercial development sites. Those are a series of regulations. And then in Newton County, a very strong piece of their regulations includes water resources, protecting the water, where water is being supplied. All of that fits in as a way of how development is guided throughout Newton County. So those three things were brought together in 2020, and that resulted in what's known as the Unified Development Ordinance. Well, since 2020, a lot of things have happened. It's a good idea to go back and revisit your codes, figure out what's working, what might not be working, figure out if there's conflicts, duplications, inconsistencies in it. Then there's always new things happening. Somebody in other states or other counties within Georgia have figured out some what we call best practices, and some of those might be a really good idea for Newton County to adopt. So we want to bring those, introduce those, and those might make their way into the code as well. And then in our business of zoning and land development, there's always new court cases, there's always new laws that the legislature passes that we need to incorporate and make sure that the code here in Newton County is up to date with those most recent court rulings and state laws. But most importantly, what we want to do are the last two bullets that you see on the screen is to make it user-friendly. Make someone who is going to be coming in to use the zoning ordinance or development regulations be able to find what they're looking for in a sensible, logical organization and be able to look at some photos and some guides and some pictures to see what development should look like, and really get most of their questions answered before they have to contact the staff or come in for a meeting. And then again, we talked about the comprehensive plan. The Unified Development Ordinance is a very good way to help implement the recommendations from the comprehensive plan. How land use should look in 5, 10, 15, 20 years is helped by how it's implemented through the Unified Development Code. So that's very important as to why we're doing this. So what we are going to end up doing, Kendig Keast is leading, we're helping, is to prepare an updated, well-organized Unified Development Code for Newton County. It will apply to all of the unincorporated areas of the county. We hope that it will be easier to understand for folks using it and interpret. It will provide reference tools. As I've mentioned before, there'll be graphics, drawings, there'll be tables of data and tables of information so you don't have to read a whole page of text. And then we will also lay out the procedures and the processes and the administrative guidelines so that if somebody is interested in, for example, rezoning their property, they kind of have an idea of what that timeline will look like from beginning to end and what meetings they need to attend and how that's administered. So that's a very important piece that people need to be aware of that we will hopefully help streamline in the code. And that does lead also to the administrative procedures. When are public hearings held? How are the applications reviewed? How much time goes by between reviews? And what bodies look at it? Is it the Planning Commission? Is it the Board of Commissioners? Is it a staff committee? So that's all laid out in the code. And then again, 3 is, what did we hear from you, the public? What did we hear from our focus groups and our stakeholders? What has the staff been wrestling with in the code that they'd like us to take a look at? So there's a list of key issues that we've already been told about, and there's new things we're learning at each public meeting that folks have opinions about that we want to make sure we at least address in the update to the Unified Development Ordinance. So again, showing pictures instead of a lot of words is one of the strategies that we'll use. So when we talk about some terms that most folks may not realize every day that they're using, we try to show you what we mean by those. Plain English, we're trying to use not a lot of jargon, trying not to use a whole lot of acronyms that people don't understand what those mean. And then again, really just streamline and make sure that the code reflects the county's policies and realize that how Newton County grows in the future is largely impacted by how the code is applied. So that's very important, and that's what we call creating value. Kendig Keast, Goodwin Mills Kaywood, we do not have a code that is sitting on a table that we're going to just slap Newton County on and bring it here and give it to you. That's not the way this works. It's very unique to each county, each community, and so that's why we're spending so much time up front getting those issues and figuring out what we need to address in it so that it's your Unified Development Code at the end of the process. So again, to repeat some of the objectives that we're going to try to meet as we do this project, some of the early issues that we've heard about already are that Newton County needs more of a mix of housing types. It shouldn't all be single family. It shouldn't all be apartments. There should be a mix of those and then all types of housing in between. And that gets us to the topic of missing middle housing. And that's a term that's being used throughout the country now to talk about housing for folks that just need a basic 3-bedroom, 2-bath home that are a school teacher or a police officer, or they're working folks that just can't afford the higher end and they don't want an apartment. There's a missing middle of the market that we're trying to address, and we can use some code updates to help bring that about. Greenfield, infill, and redevelopment. There's different types of development that will happen in Newton County. Greenfield means it's areas that have not been developed yet. There might be new roads, new water, new sewer available, and how those develop is guided by the code. Infill, there's areas that have already developed, and there might be a few lots remaining, and what's the best use of those lots? Should they match exactly what's there now, or should they be just a little bit different? And then redevelopment. There's some areas of Newton County that have developed over the last 30, 40 years. Maybe it's obsolete use. It might be an old commercial center that isn't really needed for commercial anymore. How do we encourage redevelopment to fit with the neighborhoods, and what would that look like? And there's some very good guidance provided in the code. People are interested in walking, biking, and being connected. So I'd not have to get into my car to drive to every single use I want to go to. And that's what we call connectivity. So how neighborhoods react with each other and how they react to schools, parks, and retail areas. One of the things we learned in the comp plan was very important was protecting open spaces, particularly conservation areas along rivers, creeks, and other environmentally sensitive areas. Allow for open spaces to remain open space and not develop every single piece. So there's a lot of time spent in the comprehensive plan and in this code protecting natural resources and environmental resources. And then I talked a little bit about new trends and demands, but again, what they're doing in California may not fit in Newton County, so we want to make sure that we're aware of how that's compatible and how Newton County will grow in the future. Now, a few things we wanted to make sure we let folks know we're not doing in this process. We're not addressing your property taxes in any way. We're not raising them or lowering them. We're not talking about annexation from cities, land from the county into the cities. That's not something that this will address. Each city has their own zoning ordinance and development codes. Capital improvement program, that is more of your public works, streets, sidewalks, water, sewer, utilities. They have their own separate funding, scheduling, and how they're going about delivering those improvements. We're going to look at those. It's a very important part of how the community grows, but we're not going to be changing or making any edits to that. The building code, again, that is an external document that the county adopts. It's handled by a state and international building code committee, and that's pretty much uniform around the country. So the plumbing codes, the electrical codes, things like that, we're not getting into the details of that. Same with construction standards. The public works folks here in the county have already established what the infrastructure should look like in a new subdivision or in a new commercial development. So those are really good. We'll incorporate and cross-reference those, but not change them. And also property maintenance and nuisance codes. Those are another enforcement entity of the county, is very important as to how landowners maintain their property, whether it's vacant or occupied. And again, the Unified Development Code will not address that at this time. So I wanted to let you know about our project schedule. We know this is a very sensitive issue in Newton County. We began back in July, kicked off the meeting in July, and our schedule has us to be complete by September of 2025. So it's just over a year-long process. It begins with review and analysis. It goes into a very extensive public outreach phase, which we're in now. And then next we'll really get into those character area analyses, look at that land use plan, look at the comprehensive plan, and figure out what issues we've come up with that we heard from the public and from the stakeholders and the staff, and begin identifying what those issues are. And then right after the first of the year, we'll begin drafting the new Unified Development Ordinance, and it will be done section by section by section. So a section will be written, drafted, presented to the county, put out for public input, and we will repeat that process through each section of the code. And then we will get to the end to have the full draft Unified Development Ordinance update, and then that's when that public hearing process I talked about earlier will begin. I want to again emphasize our current goal is to be complete in September 2025, and the county currently has a 2-year moratorium on new residential development. So we want to be very cognizant that we don't want to hold up anything any longer than we have to as consultants to help deliver the draft ordinance, so that we can get that, perhaps get that moratorium off sooner than the 2-year lifespan that it has. So again, at our meetings, we wanted to just walk through for you what, had you been able to attend one of our meetings, what that feels like, and we certainly encourage you to submit comments to us, and we'll let you know how you can do that at the end. But really, we're asking folks to think a little bit about if they know what's going on in the Unified Development Ordinance, or they've had a reason to interact with it, what's working well, and what's not working. And really take that into account as we do the update. And then also, if you've moved here from somewhere else, or you have family or friends and you've been there and you've said, boy, I really like how they did a certain type of development, let us know about that, because we can look up their code and see if there's pieces of that we can incorporate here, a place that you visited or go on vacation. And then finally, geographically, throughout the county, in your district, in your neighborhood, what are the things that you like, and what are the things that you'd like to see changed or updated or improved? And when we kind of have an idea of which areas of the county need attention, then we can really focus in some of the regulations into those areas. So we've set out those general things to think about, and we have 2 exercises at our meetings that we've asked folks to participate in. One is what I just talked about. Show us your favorite places and show us the areas of the county that need improvement. And so we do that through a series of dots, and folks put the dots on the map and we collect all that information. And then the second thing is the issues. So as I mentioned, we're starting to collect what are your issues that we should address as we update the code. And what we've done is we've taken the issues that came out of the comprehensive plan, the recommendations that have to do with land use and development, and we've put those on posters. And we're asking folks to prioritize those as whether they're prioritized with 1 or prioritized with 5, and 1 being lower and 5 being higher. And then folks have given us some very good comments and notes about some of these. And so we had a series of those, and we also had a blank form where folks could fill in some of their own issues, which have been very good. Now, how can you give us feedback? I think the best way to do it, we have a form at the meeting that folks have taken home and sent back to us. The best way, I think, is to send your comments either on this form or just in an email to Shayna Applewaite. She's the director of the department, and that's her email on the screen. And she has been very good about collecting those and providing those back to us. And we've been incorporating those into the comments that we've received from the public. So again, that's the process that we're going through, the schedule we're going through, why we're doing it, and a little bit about the process that we're trying to collect information from folks. So if you do have questions, please contact the staff at the county, and we look forward to seeing you at our next meeting. And thank you very much for the opportunity to provide you with this summary presentation.